It was the type of meal that ought to have concluded with glass clinking, smiles, and a flimsy argument about who would clean the dishes. For once, there was only steak, and no yelling about politics or reliving of long-forgotten family grievances. With plenty of red wine and laughing to keep everyone warm, I'd even caught myself thinking, perhaps this is the pivotal moment. Perhaps this was the evening that both her and my families will recall why we made an effort to combine them in the first place. Marlo was sitting next to me, dressed in the navy blue gown that I adored, which she named. Her laugh was effortless. Her hand occasionally touched my arm and her peacemaker dress. I foolishly believed that we were still on the same page as the subject shifted from work updates to holiday preparations. I smiled softly as I lifted my glass and murmured, "I can't wait for our vacation." It wasn't a lavish toast, but rather a hopeful message during an unexpectedly easy night. I noticed the pause, followed by a flicker in her smile. It was followed by a full-bodied head laugh, rather than a snort or giggle. She gave me a kind of thrown-back laugh and stared directly at me. "It's only for family and without you." I didn't initially understand. I didn't accept the words, thinking that perhaps she had misheard or meant something else, but suddenly the table exploded. Jackson smacked the table, and her mother almost choked on her wine while yelling as if it were the greatest joke she had ever heard. Even Pierce, her arrogant younger brother, reclined back in his chair and smiled as he laughed, wheezing. I blushed, but not from the wine. I didn't laugh or ask for it. "We've been sitting on this one all week." Without clarification, I simply nodded, grinned a little, and got to my feet. The sound of my laughter still reverberated across the table, nearly drowning out the chair, moving back. I glanced at Mara, hoping for a slight remorse, a whispered apology, or even a look that indicated she understood it had gone too far. But nothing could stop her smile. With my shoulders shaking from trying to contain my laughter, I left before they could witness my cringe. I heard a murmured, "He's always so sensitive," or another laugh coming from behind. The front door shut. I gave them the gratification of a dramatic departure with a satisfying click, but I didn't smash it. Something colder than embarrassment weighed down the driveway, so I got in the car and sat there. The engine hummed softly while I looked, clutching the steering wheel as if it might keep me together. A part of me wanted to go back inside to demand an explanation, forcing her to claim it was a nasty effort at humor or a prank gone bad, but I knew better. That joke wasn't impromptu. It had been planned, practiced, and shared. They waited for me to mention the trip, and when the time came, I drove quietly home. The nice silence that settles in your chest every mile between the dinner and the drive, not only in a car. The table in my apartment felt like a tiny betrayal that was gradually coming back to haunt me. I considered our trip folder on my desktop, still cluttered with saved flight alerts and beach rental bookmarks. I recalled how Mara had feigned interest. She said, "We'll talk about it more later," in a preoccupied tone, when I showed her those possibilities last week. She had already decided. I didn't even turn on the lights or pour a drink when I arrived home. I simply sat on the edge of the bed and gazed at the framed picture of us at the beach 2 years prior, grinning like we'd fooled everyone into thinking we were flawless. I tried to recall what it was like to believe so after looking at that picture. It had a message from Mara on my phone. "Don't be emotional. It was a joke." She didn't acknowledge or apologize for humiliating me in front of both families. I now recognized that she had not acknowledged the fact that her remarks had been intended to hurt, alienate, and categorize me as an outsider. I always picked up our vacation folder and deleted it instead of responding. Every travel schedule, bookmark, picture of a golden beach, and 2 glasses clinking next to a swimming pool. Gone. I changed the folder's name to Not My Vacation. I finally switched on the lights after shutting down the laptop, thinking I might be able to see where we were now. Look it in the face, too. I didn't cry that night, yet I didn't sleep either. 5 days later, I stood up after lying there and stared at the ceiling while listening to the sound of someone else's laughter. My phone blew up with a fraud alert while I was waiting in line at the pharmacy to pick up a prescription I didn't even want to be on. I glanced down at the page from my bank that showed $10,000 marked as potentially fraudulent activities. It made me sick to my stomach, so I stepped outside. I opened the banking app, heart racing, and discovered that the transaction wasn't fraudulent. It was Mara, and I knew the routing number she had provided when we had opened our joint account 3 years prior. I had set up to make grocery bill sharing easier. I said some stupid things. She left a brief, nearly comical remark on the transfer, implying that what was mine was also actually ours. Family needs an emergency? I nearly laughed, but not because it was hilarious. It was exactly on brand. Her interpretation of an emergency may range from her mother needing new tires to her cousin needing bail money for a fraud that went awry. Or perhaps it was just another vacation fund with the label. As something admirable, hoping that I would be too trusting or too exhausted to see that I didn't freeze or fumble. My fingers moved. I selected the option to cancel the purchase with the accuracy of someone who had used up all of their generosity. After locking the card and renaming the account, I paused to look at the blank label box before gently typing, "Pay, without me." Those 3 words were the purest air I had ever breathed. Weeks passed, and my phone lighted up like a slot machine in a casino in Vegas. Mara called, but I didn't pick up. She left voice notes with some begging messages after texting once, twice, and 6 times in a row. Her tone varied with each message becoming more chaotic. Some people were irritated while others thought I was the villain for defending my personal bank account. I slid from, "Baby, you're being ridiculous," and "This is just a misunderstanding. My family needs this," to, "That joke at the dinner table had come back to haunt me every time someone stated, 'You were part of the family, but I wasn't anymore.' They had laughed at me, not with me, and now, less than a layer of the illusion was gone." Her mother sent a message later that evening saying, "I raised Mara to believe in unity. A week later, they demanded 10 grand. I looked at the text for a while before deleting it without responding. What did she mean? Behavior beneath you? Below me was the man who seemed dependable enough, yet disposable enough to be made fun of in public. Jackson, who was always willing to flash his teeth when someone was bleeding, texted to finance their alleged emergency. A gif of someone tossing money into a bonfire, a meme, and a laughing emoticon. He continued to undermine the family, writing, "I didn't dignify it with a comment, since at some point silence becomes." That evening, I sat in my flat and realized that I was finally conversant